Right, so here we are, starting late today with the Portal Mountain Development Meeting number 61. Ideally, a continuation of the theme of the last two, which was the APS language stack programming language. Right?
Yeah, more than programming, it's originating from the idea of creating a programming language, but it's actually supposed to be above that. It's
Well, as we spoke, many layers, and even getting into domain-driven design and the ideas of organization of people and activities, and that activities happen in domains kind of idea.
Yeah.
So you speak a different language in each one, and there's maybe translation between them. This is kind of the higher meta language idea.
Yeah,
And this is how we describe the offices or the primordial archetypes, which we've been talking about for a
Yeah.
long time, right?
I-
So we're
I-
trying to put that into a concrete sense where we're getting into actual expression of programming language stacks. Right?
so, and I think it's
A
worth
product,
noting,
if you will.
It's
Sorry.
worth noting that this particular language's purpose isn't so much to be like a product onto itself, so much as to become a bridge for various nomenclatures, right? Like its primary encompassing our overarching goal is to be able to capture different dialects, different expressions of the same thing, and try to negotiate the landscape so that it's all isomorphic. And this comes in line with our previous discussions for, say, the polymorphic method, which is one of the tangents we had in the book.
Right. And we've talked about that with the polyquine relay,
Polyglottic.
polyquine relay,
Yeah.
where this idea of you can have a cake recipe, but you transform it into another, and the very same artifacts that you would read up to interpret that recipe get taken up in a different way, basically transformed in a way that it still has meaning, but it does something completely different.
Yeah, in a very different context. So, in our world, like the experiential world, that is, it would be like thinking about moving your arm and moving your arm at the same time,
And this is kind of like a metaphor for metaphor,
which
if
is
you
what
will.
I was trying to do here.
Right. A metaphor for metaphor. So, in other words, the ability to switch and speak in different languages of the same thing. Like the fact that I moved my arm and the fact that I said that I moved my arm, those are going down totally different nervous pathways, if you will. But it's essentially the same idea. Pop them out, right?
Expressed differently, yeah.
Right. So APS language stack, that's what I've been kind of calling it, I guess.
No, it's a good stack. My preferred name has gotten.
Too bad. Espresso.
Has gotten.
I found out that it was taken already.
Unfairly ripped out of my cold dead fingers.
And we're not big enough to beat it up, so we'll wait till that.
One day.
One day we'll be big enough to beat it up.
But anyway, yeah, it's meant to represent that, but
Or just come up with our own name, of course,
yes.
for now, which we'll have. That's what we have to do.
So let's step back a little bit and maybe touch on a few notes that are very important to dealing with the APS, and that is one of them is capacity, and I think that's important to mention because it has one, for one. Being limited to the physical brain, the mind has a capacity to how many things it can represent without ambiguity, right?
And you're talking like it'd be okay to visualize here like actual neuron synapses in their junctions and their tendrils going out, and like what's happening at these nodes as to what's being allowed through or not.
Or even the simplified version that you have with neural network demonstrations where you have circles and lines connecting to them. It's a simplified version of that.
Right.
So
the idea that something is building up to becoming physically too much for the physical.
Yeah, what they're finding is that, and this is through research, not through just hand waving guessing, that instead of like bits and bytes in the way that like a regular memory works in a computer in the physical sense, where you have like a piece of memory it has a specific address that you can recall by, right? So what the contrast was made is that instead of having a physical point in space like RAM does, a mind would have, or a neurological network would have something, point in time. And the point in time is a reference to the weights carried between the neurons. So the strength of the connection between any given neuron.
What does that have to do with time?
Because that strength shifts over time. I'm not.
But the strength itself is referencing memories that
The
are
s- the-
accumulating over time? Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
the strength itself refers to the strength of the connection between any two given neurons. So if the weight is high, it's a very strong connection.
Yeah.
So if this neuron turns on, it's
No, I get it,
that
but
much more likely
that
this
seems
neuron
that seems
will turn
space as well. Like, you know
on.
what I
Well,
mean?
space and time are kind of dimensions anyway, so it's harder to. Yeah, I mean, it might not be the most important element to the explanation.
No, but there should be a connection. Like,
Well, time is another dimension. Like it could be thought of as spatially, but it's only moving forward. It doesn't move back. So you can't like reference a time before.
of course.
Or-
So like
or-
my
or
my,
like-
my
or like-
thinking is like, in this way you're getting down to the kind of synapse itself, and either encouraging it to connect with another or not encouraging it. So it's like the connection pipes between them go
Yeah.
up or down. But this kind of brings it down to a atomic scale, if you will, where it's like this is all that has to matter, because what that node that, or this node that it's connecting to, how strong its connections are, is totally independent from how this is connected potentially. However, they will tend to correspond. Like,
Yes.
certain will get connected all
They
together.
they won't be connected directly, but due to the full overarching learning of the network, there will be a correlation to the strength of this weight
See,
versus that weight.
What it does still feels like space to me, but I guess that the time sense is that in the moment, it's like a
These
signal
weight.
comes in, and it's like, okay, now this is the decision state of the network. Boom, now this is the decision state, right? Like pulses, now this is the decision state. And that's how you're painting this picture.
Mm-hmm.
Like in incremental time increments, kind of, because the physically chemical has to blast off a charge.
There
and all
is
this kind of stuff.
there is that, but having gone through one iteration,
That's
of
my
that,
link, my interpretation. I don't know if that's
So the other
why
thing,
you would say that's time versus
so
space.
the other thing to note, that's what I'm getting to that. So the other thing to note that once you've gone through an iteration of doing that, the strengths of the weights changes. Right? There's a feedback, a situation going on in which the result of the
weight changes over time.
of the process.
The size of the pipe, if you will,
Yeah.
connecting two nodes.
So every time there's something goes through the pipe's nature, if you will, is changed potentially slightly. So that means the next
Right.
time anything goes through it, it's going through a potentially very different network.
That's right. So what's happened, right? That's the next dimension. That's like the abstract dimension of what I was talking about. What's emerging out of my timing that I was saying about
Mhm.
is that.
So, to cut the long story shorter, what they found is that instead of capacity like in bits, which is more spatial, the capacity is found in the weights. And the way that's measured is the ability of the entire network to recognize different representations
So like weight,
at the same
weight
time.
is abstraction.
Yeah,
Weight is the abstraction lifting out of the network,
sure.
as opposed to the concrete.
In some sense, yes.
Mhm.
And what you're finding is that this very same network has the potential to recognize multiple things. So unambiguously, right? So we measure the capacity based on how many things it can recognize unambiguously, given its current weight, quote unquote, structure, how it's
Okay.
how it's currently suspended in time.
Now, this idea about ambiguity, you're probably going to have to go more on that, because
So-
I don't understand why. Is it
So the-
we're hitting a physical limit, is what you're talking about?
Right.
That something has become already so big in the pipe, if you will, that something coming along to try and knock and just scatter the whole pipe.
So So in the
You're
I'll-
adding on to something that you can't. I don't get it.
Let me walk you through the experiment that was done. So we're talking about recognizing a 10 by 10 grid of pixels, right? And in that grid, you can have an assortment of images. They chose 8, right? They've been able to train the network so that anytime it is given one of those images, it can faithfully reproduce it on the other end. Right? So different arrangements of 10 by 10 pixels, specific pictures. What they found though is that
What's the end to end? What's the network? What's the communication happening?
So if you give it a picture of
I get this
one,
idea of a 10 by 10 grid of pixels,
so,
basically.
and and in it you have white pixels and black pixels.
Sure.
The black pixels
And something
make
is sensing
make a 1.
Something is sensing the state of each pixel, right?
Right. Those are the inputs.
And then doing something with it.
Doing something with it, reproducing it, recreating the picture. I think was the experiment. I might be wrong on that, but it's worth just watching
Sure.
the YouTube video itself.
Yeah.
So
So how does it learn whether it's getting closer? Do we have to have a
Reward
human
and
sitting there
there's a
recognizing, okay, this kind of looks
there's
like
a
it?
reward and punishment function that every time it gets it wrong, there is something that tells it that, and so it will change the
Okay.
weights.
And you don't need a human there to tell whether that pixel was guessed wrong.
Right. It can just feed back into
So
itself.
in one cycle almost, in a couple cycles, it should get almost the exact.
Yeah.
If it guesses, it'll guess 50% is black, 50 is white.
So what that does is it changes the weights. So if it guesses wrong, the weights are wrong. Therefore, you gotta either increase, decrease,
And then
go,
there's
and go
probably
from there.
like algorithms you can do that if you hit a pixel positive, probably the one around it is going to be positive. So you keep doing that in and outward.
There's multiple strategies. Like the complexity of the strategy is beyond the scope of the discussion.
Right.
But here's what's in scope of the discussion. Sometimes is what will happen is that it will see an image, but instead of reproducing the image faithfully, it will reproduce a combination of 2 images that could potentially fulfill a lot of its requirements. So sometimes it will give you an amalgamation, right? And the more you get into these amalgamations instead of faithful reproduction, the more you're hitting the capacity of the network. Is that making sense?
Probably. I was
So-
busy making a title though.
So you have like 8 pictures, and the idea is you input a picture, you get the same picture out. Sometimes it would do what's called the negative.
Mm-hmm.
So it would reverse everything. Same picture, but everything reversed. Another thing it would do is combine from the from a
And
couple.
it wasn't.
from
Isn't
a
it
couple-
programmed to do that?
No. You train it and it recognizes things, and then all of a sudden it does that.
It's got to be taking in like a lot of randomness as a source
So
to be trying things.
So, no, hold on. The idea behind all of this is that there is a certain combination of weights sitting between the neurons, such that it can reproduce faithfully all of the pictures.
Oh, you're talking about the
unambiguously.
polyglottism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it can
Mhm.
reproduce any picture faithfully, but then you can reach a point of where
But
you'll
why
feed it an
would
input, and it would not be able to recognize which one of the 2 version it is, and it will combine them. So not only are you seeing evidence of capacity, right? You've reached the limit. What you're also seeing is evidence of metaphor. This is that, right? Like this jump from how the mind can also facilitate from the pictures it has,
And that's
imbued
almost seen
into
as a
it.
problem here because it needs to be
Well, it's
reined
very
in,
specific, yeah.
if you will, not misused.
But in this case, it was an experiment, and so it's more like about showing the actual outcomes. And these 2 particular outcomes are very interesting in that they show the capacity in the sense of unambiguity. So a network
An ambiguity.
ambiguity, yes. So sorry.
What was Cameron's word earlier today? That was funny. Just these favorite, beautiful, complex words.
So yeah. So anyway, like they were showing how it could reach a limit where the ambiguity can start popping up if you keep feeding it an ambiguous image, but also if you reach its capacity. So if it's like one more image than it can handle, it'll start doing this thing too. It'll try to combine what it has into the new form, and it'll continue to do that as much as it can. Now that's
What do you
an
mean
interesting
one
feature.
more image than it can handle?
So
it sounds like, what is the image?
So if the neural network
that's
can
being
handle
handled or not?
So if the neural network can only handle 7 images and ambiguously using the weight count that it has, so it has to do with how many connections you have. So say that map has reached its capacity,
No, I don't know about that.
and then
Tech or whatever, how it's set up.
and then well,
You have 7 inputs, therefore if you try add one more image, it's going to fail. I don't understand what you're
no,
talking about.
so for each pixel you would have an input neuron. Then you will have what's called a hidden layer, and it's going to have rows and rows and rows of neurons. Your input neurons are going to each connect to the first row. Each neuron in each row is going to connect to the next row, to each neuron in the next row. So it's like a huge grid of neurons interconnected together.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the networks also go
Do you
backwards.
mean to remember like an image like the letter 1?
Yeah. So for instance, if you're
Or number,
so
letter L?
our 10 by 10 grid is essentially an array of numbers of zeros and ones. Right? 100 numbers, 100 slots
Yeah.
of a 0 and a 1.
So you're saying this tech is emulated in like neural network programs, but also it's how the mind would work in connecting
It's
neurons
showcasing,
to
yeah.
say remember a face or something.
Yeah, it's showcasing the similarities and also the limitations.
Right. So now what's with the number of inputs?
So-
how does that
So you've configured it to recognize so you have an array of 100 zeros and ones, right? You've configured it to recognize seven orientations, 7 exact patterns. You give it this pattern, it faithfully reproduces it. You give it that pattern, it faithfully reproduces it. Now you give it the 8th pattern after it learned all the 7th to faithfully reproduce, and instead of faithfully reproducing it, it's drawing on the existing patterns already and produces something that is a combination of of some of them into a unified picture.
So you're talking about bootstrapping, basically, like how a neural net bootstraps through using fundamental puzzle pieces, building up. That's like the language we're talking about, why it builds out of small pieces into more complicated emergences.
So in this case, the neural network itself is not biological, so it doesn't itself grow.
But
So you don't have more cells, you don't have more connections, you don't have more things to put weight to, which is what the brain does do.
yeah. So you're talking about the fact that through a cycle, an AI will be able to imprint something freshly. That's why ChatGPT, for example, or any of these things, they start fresh. They don't start with what you've said before. If they did, you'd be fucked. Like you'd have to start off tiptoeing around it, or you'd have to reset the whole thing. Like,
And this is also why it has amnesia. Because eventually it reaches a critical point at which it can't differentiate this pattern from that pattern, from this pattern from that pattern. And so it goes through a thing that combines them all into something that you didn't even think that was going to happen.
which that can be the magic or neat about it. Sometimes weird things emerge that you never would have thought of, or
At the same time, it's also the exposure of limitations for the APS itself. That's the meat of this point, if you will, where we get to a point of where the APS is overloaded with information and you just can't cram more shit into it.
So how do we translate this to people who get old and crusty, like we all do? And it's not like a hard and fast, okay, I've now gone insane because I keep the universe keeps changing and I keep having to adapt to it. Dang it! This is the 70th year of my life, and damned if I'm going to change, right? Whatever.
Meanwhile, everything is like
Just keeps never stops
like a
going.
rug underneath your feet, taking it
Right.
out.
So what's the translation to people? Because it's not hard and fast like that, like we can see in these AI models. We're like kind of slowly somehow approaching this chemical limit, do you think? Or can these things be just broken apart completely? Because that happens. I've experienced
what
that.
we can say is that a human being reaches a limit for information cramming.
Now, can we also say that this limit is heavily becomes a problem and apparent in a ego machine sense, as opposed to a self machine, if we can go back to those terms, which tends to integrate things? You know what I'm saying? The ego has to manage so many things, and that can all come crashing on your shoulders, right? That's where I think we can hit those types of limits that we're seeing in programming of computers, because humans are becoming like this AI that's just been fed too much bullshit, right?
I think it's most evidenced in the way old people go. Like your content, satisfied sage on his last breath versus your disappointed, regretful, I should have done this, I could have done that, typical human being.
So you're talking about like a state of mind which in the moment would allow you to deconstruct those old crusts. This is kind of assuming that we can kind of exercise discipline in the mind to reinvigorate.
I know it sounds
The
a little.
APS.
I know it sounds morbid to say it this way, but it's like almost like being completely happy to die. Like not suicidal. I'm not talking about like being
No,
like.
take it as an extreme kind of metaphor.
But being content, like
what's
so
happening
content with what happened
in the moment, that we all know if and we all could die at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
If our last dying thoughts are going to be panicked of, oh, this should have been done, that should have, or is it just like, well, this moment was coming? What
Yeah.
and what
That's
those
kind
those
of,
two ways that you can go? What does that say about how you are interacting with the world now? Not in that time in the future, which is coming, but what does it say about now? If that's
that's
what
that's
your
literally like
future's
how
like.
to go to understand what I'm trying to get
Mhm.
at there. So yeah.
Right. In other words, caught in the dream.
Or in the moment, because the moment doesn't change whether you're dying or not. It's just one moment passing into another, which is what dying is: the passing of a moment in another moment. Like
Mm-hmm.
in this, like we talk about narratives and we talk about dreams and we talk about how like they're all stretched out over space and time, but at the same time narratives are in the moment.
I would say
Dreams
like
are in the moment.
we don't want to like vilify or anything one side or another, and in that way you might say like dreams aren't bad. This is our life, our history, what we've gone through.
Yeah.
Why not have a trip down memory lane?
I made
know?
a point about that on Telegram, saying like dreams is what keeps you away from teeth and claws.
Right, but it's also what brought us to this state of even appreciation, thankfulness, gratefulness. These are kind of good thoughts to be having, and they come in context.
I feel like they've never went away.
They come in context.
I feel like
though.
they've been buried very, very, very hard. Like there's been like a huge campaign to bury those feelings, but I don't think they ever can be. It's like a seed that's being buried in soil. It's only going to thrive in it. Because the more you shit on people, the more they will find ways to be grateful for wherever they have. I mean, you see this in poverty a lot. You see that generosity manifests itself more often than not in the impoverished, not
Right.
not
This
in
is
the.
related to the catch-22 of being motivated to um, improve the world around you, because you would only see that as something that makes sense necessarily when you hit rock bottom, when you're at the bottom of the earth right now, getting destroyed.
Or not
in the
even
flames of
not
war.
even hitting rock bottom, but being able to touch the earth, because in a lot of cases the people that have all the money are somewhere in the sky, metaphorically speaking. They don't know what the ground even looks like. So
And we do. Who do we think
we're
we
on
are?
it. But we're on it. Of course we do. Yes.
Like what I'm talking about is like that many of us are at that point in people homeless, of even a big majority of maybe a majority of people who have shelters over their head are also suffering vastly in other ways. Just
Well,
needs
shelter
not being
versus
met.
shelter versus food is a huge one. A lot of people juggle eating versus having a place to sleep. Clothes, another one. A lot of people have to juggle wearing basically drapes versus eating.
Right. But we were talking about like the APS and this crustification and like how painful it is, and like how this kind of stops you from even hearing about new ways of maybe organizing
Do you want to
people
use the
together.
illusion thing?
Use the what?
The illusion idea?
I guess so, but I just want to finish quickly that it's related to this idea, like looking at the world and having this irony that only the people at the bottom understand wicked problems of the world and just how bad things are. It seems like, and people in comfort and entertainment and distraction, especially like because the process of commodification of life, including our own cognitive processes, our time management and all that through a feed, coming through feeds now, we're disconnected from that completely in comfort. And it's like you have very limited, from that perspective, you have very limited ability, agency to act.
Yeah, like the ignorance that
It's a
surrounds
wicked
your
problem.
decision
And many people,
is
the vast majority,
extremely.
super trapped like that. And the irony is, when the inevitable problems and collapses of that complete ignorance of everything around you, when it finally the stage show collapses, that's when, oh, I understand now why we should take care of each other, and let's just
Yeah, but then there's nothing left
let's
to use to
and
take
at that
care.
point there's no more resources, quote unquote, immediately in these kind of panic collapse scenarios where people get it, aha, we should be working together, and oh, it was fragile and all along. Like the people just go psychotic in those moments because what has been held firmly as real is poof, gone as a foundation, right? And so, which this has been happening to 90% of the world, just goes right into that pit, right? It's the top 10% who doesn't go into that pit, except at the last moment in the revolution, where the path about a circle happens.
I mean, there's that.
And we're back through violence into the same bullshit, same as it ever was.
I was trying to more point to the idea of how pointing away from that is actually a painful experience, and that's why I was mentioning the illusion thing, like where the not metaphor, but
Like, are you saying as a trauma addiction, like you don't want to even entertain the idea of a gift economy? Like, oh, nobody will, like, who,
right?
I don't need carrots
because it
I
looks
need
like
money.
an illusion.
I don't want to trade this or that.
Because what it does is it turns the current way of thinking into an illusion, and then your brain is trying to put it back together, right? And that's the pain response right there, because all of a sudden that reality that you're, like you were saying, that reality that you're engaged in is turned on its head, And what are you doing from that point on? And that was also the same point that we made about the Dark Night of the Soul. If you take that on like completely, you're not only
Feels like a
losing
constant
your
punishment.
reality, and you now don't have anywhere to go to.
And the kind of crazy part to that is, um, yeah, you can take the punishment as an experiment, but once you enter membership into the guild, there's a sort of, it's no longer a choice to take the punishment or not. It's like this is, you see the reality kind of more.
Well, punishment transforms back into pain in the way it's supposed to be, because pain is what is leveraged to create punishment.
This is a very good point.
So you backtrack.
Yeah.
Back
You're
into,
not,
you experience now pain, but not punishment.
the punishment bound through the ego out to the market and all that.
Yeah. So what you do is you erase both reward
Right.
and
So
punishment.
it's quite
and
an
now,
exchange. It's quite a trade.
and now you're back into like the more primordial pain and pleasure, which even more primordially will be experienced as affect with mastery. This is the quality of affect of this moment. This is the quality of affect of that moment. This one is pleasureful.
Mm-hmm.
This one is painful.
Right. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Break?
That was some good points. Yeah, sure. Let's take a quick
one.
breakies.
Real quick.
like that.
Hello, hello.
And we're back.
Yeah. So yeah.
That was just one note that I think got kind of missed a little bit that I was pointing to is this the journey of increasing coherence, as we've called it before. It's kind of like what the participant would do to like, oh hey, try out this model, hey, see what that's about. Participation is about having a certain faith and in testing, trying out a model and seeing what feeds back, how it matches to experience.
Literally, all guild activity is
Notating
feedback,
the discrepancy,
yeah.
etc. Right. So, taking this kind of model, you're taking punishment because it's like in that faith, it's work. It's hard work. Like to pull up a model and compare it with your experience and find, oh, it's not making sense. I don't understand this or that, right?
Right, and that
It's
hits,
it's
that
painful.
hits that capacity.
It sounds
issue.
like an insult, like what it's telling you or something. Like
The capacity discussion is really, really interesting only because it points to where the pain originates from. Why is there punishment perceived in the narrative, right? So that whole idea of you are not getting an unambiguous response out of your input, right? Like you've reached that capacity, and now you're looking at something that's basically demorphed or isn't congruent with whatever reality imagery you have in your mind. Like this is the point about the optical illusion. You don't have a set of imagery in your mind to complete the picture, and so your mind is trying, right? This is what induces that frustration, that pain point.
so by capacity, there you're talking about the crusting of the APS
Yes.
over long periods of time, in which
For sure.
the things have just become so complex that
On their own.
somehow everything, I guess, is meshed together in a way that it can't, any of it can't be questioned, or it all has to be, and that's like a massive undertaking, right? So that's why it would feel
Yeah, the
bad.
output of that image, if you feed that back into it, becomes so incongruent that it's painful. Incongruent, I mean, you're not finding anything that you can actually make out, right? So this is why I'm likening it to an optical illusion. There's everything about the image is recognizable in pieces, but together, it's breaking your brain. Right? That one illusion where you have the thing inside the other thing. They're both moving together, but the way they're shaped is causing your visual perspective to fuck up, and so it looks like one is
or
turning
like
the other way
dancer,
around.
the ballerina dancer. Which way is it turning?
There's that one is another one, but that's a simpler one. But you have like a few of them that are like, or even the dots that you see in the middle of a square grid of white lines.
Mm-hmm.
So the point isn't about like what your brain is doing to try to fix this thing, but the fact that it's stressing over it and trying to do it in the first place. It's outputting the energy for it. That's
what I meant. Yeah.
it's finding an isomorphism. A dysmorphism. A dysmorphism comes across as the pain response in the moment.
Like just casually, this is where you're on complete autopilot, essentially.
Yeah.
Like you're fixed in the dream. It's autopilot. You're simply, what happens to you. You're calculating a reward or a punishment. It either feels good or bad, and it's perceived as either reward or punishment. Therefore, there's an agency in it, and you should maybe attack who's doing it to you to defend yourself, and all this kind of automatic.
So yeah, we transplant this exact same idea into a conversation, say, with regards to Mr. Donald Trump, and you start to see the how that pain response.
Any type of
is playing a role.
Anybody
in that
will
response.
feel bad talking politics in the most heated manner, right?
Yeah, you know me. I go for the extreme examples because this is the one everybody's going to
Just
recognize.
mention the name already, everybody feels
Yeah,
bad.
it's already there. One way or the other. You either feel bad because I'm bad mouthing him, or you feel bad because this is what happens and you're a part of it, and whatever. Either way, it's there. And yeah,
It's market behavior through identity, all this who's above who, people on different sides, competition, that kind of stuff, like the ego slotting itself.
and then a little shit like me is going to say, all that slotting doesn't mean dick. Fuck you, it doesn't. Right? Like that's the pain response right there. And there is something to be said for just trolling, because this was more of a trolling approach, but the demonstration was about the actual content of the
It was for a purpose.
Yeah. This would be trolling in real life situation, obviously, so no, that's not the approach.
To even mention the name.
But yeah, that's
Right.
the gist of the whole relevance of the capacity to the pain response, to the APS having a limit of the capacity, and the resolution, if you want.
Do you think if our brains were bigger?
No. No, it's in the method. It's literally in the method, because
Or
this
Is
is
it like the density of your connections, like you can't just expand them out, they're near each other?
no, it's like with memorization. It's the same trick. The model is doing the same trick that the memorization techniques are doing by putting everything into a poem and a structure and everything like that. That's what the model is doing. So what the model is doing is it gives you a simple enough structure so that every time you get new information into it, it'll reintegrates and reintegrates and reintegrates. And so you have one simple structure continuously growing
right.
and growing and growing. And so it doesn't need to have a lot of different special cases.
Yeah. So actually, you're talking about there's like almost a processing limitation in, like, if we had maybe faster processors, right? But the chemical reaction and this kind of stuff, the way that it's built up neurochemically, you can't just consider everything under the sun. It's like
Right.
staring at the blades of grass, trying to give everything its attention.
So this is why isomorphism is such a thing across the field here, because if you integrate everything according to isomorphisms rather than specific details, everything becomes a metaphor of everything else over and
Right.
over and over again. So you don't need to take in a whole lot of information.
Right. And so
Mastery
this is kind of
in its
the
finest.
this is the one thing that could actually justify itself in saying, oh, just add one more idea to your pile. This is the only one thing that can justify doing that, because the pile collapses, right?
Tower of Babel diagram right there. Just one more ego. Just one more ego. Just one more ego. Just one more ego. Just one more ego.
Right. And so that's a challenge too for the model, because it's always taken as charlatanism.
Well, the model assumes a flat landscape already.
But it's
So
perceived as that new information.
It's a challenge, but the challenge is not to expose the ego or whatever, but to get a representation of the ego stack flattened out over here, and over time phase it out.
Right.
That's like the membrane at work right there. I'm still good.
Right. And we're talking about, practically speaking, this idea of like a meta community, the guild, if you will.
Yeah, and remember, this is like a kind of community that is hidden in plain sight, not because of like ulterior motives, or
Because essentially it agrees with
or
the
any
current
of that
system that
stuff.
it is actually efficient
Yeah.
as fuck and all that, and you just have to latch something on top of it to yet again emerge a new sort of language, i.e. the guild, on top of this ownerism, capitalism, identity, the market essentially,
Yeah.
on top of the market.
So the only thing it needs to actively be cognizant of is the fact that it cannot look like corruption, because corruption within the system also looks a lot like.
And
the
again,
model.
this is the idea that it's always its main problem or obstacle is it's going to be taken as a charlatan because that's what they always do. It's always
Well, I think so.
it's always proposing itself as a solution, if you will, or existing as some mechanism.
No, my point is that the system tends to view corruption as anything that circumvents its processes.
Oh, I see from the system's perspective. Correct, and that's why
So
why
you,
we
you
just
can't,
said
so the gift economy
there's
can't
nothing-
can't be understood as a corruption. So, for example, like me rubbing your back or scratching your back, I think the expression is.
why not both?
Shut up! I
Wink,
fucked it up.
wink.
I fucked it up. Anyway, my point being is that that whole idea of scratch my back, you scratch yours, you scratch mine, can be
Right.
seen as corruption through the system's eyes. So it's very important to only engage in activity that won't trigger those that processing. Right? Because anytime
And this is done through
anytime you give a gift, it could be seen as a corrupting
this is done
influence.
obviously. I think through a trade guild.
Yes.
In its documentation and memory of transaction.
Yes,
and all that
this
kind
is
of stuff.
this
And
is the spot.
proper bookkeeping and recording of everything.
This is the spot where it has to be like totally legit. Like it can't circumvent nothing,
Mhm.
and not even in spirit either, because that's how you get caught
But
as well. If you just like play fast and loose with the spirit of the law.
in other words, not taking this whole idea seriously that civilization and society exist as it is right now, as kind of like the best of our best. This is the best we got, and we're seeing the good parts of it and want to utilize those fully, transparently, legitimately to build even better things. Why not? Isn't that what like the human spirit's about?
The myth of progress would have you say so.
Right. No arguments there. So, but again, that idea that it's not a fight against anything or this is bad or we're not condemning anything.
Yeah.
It's like it's more like, as you were saying earlier, like singing a song, right? You do it because you enjoy it. What's wrong with that?
Well, it's not just enjoyment, right? Like you don't sing just because you enjoy.
Well,
it. There's
yeah.
something inside there that needs to come out. Like that's the kind of
It's
song I'm
a
talking about.
total
I'm not talking about
resonation,
a
right,
job.
Or an entertainment.
Right. I'm talking about like there is something inside. Like you just want to move this way. You want to.
Right.
Whatever.
It's inherent, emergent.
Whatever moves your butt. So that's that's the entire idea of absorbing energy and dissipating, right? Like every stack is said to be, metaphorically speaking, all the resonance wakes hit in it, build it, build up the energy inside of it, and then at some point it needs to let it go, dissipate it, right? All of that energy, it's at capacity, if you will. So it's the same thing.
No, I get it. The stacks and all that stack view.
Yeah, like this is what's called a resonance wake. Like, why do you say anything whatsoever? Why?
Mhm.
Well, the same. This is the same
Right.
reason.
And it's pretty satisfying in knowing that that type of motivation is emergent from our deep from our beings, and which we share with everybody on the same planet, right? So
Just-
you know that like,
Just in
you get this kind of
breathing
feeling.
human.
Like I guess even creating music would be pretty like a more simple metaphor. You know that people enjoy it. It just brings goodness for it does. You know.
Music is the guild. Art is the guild. This is what this is a point I've been drawing to as well. These expressions, these resonances, these soaking up the energy and letting it back out. That is what the guild describes and subscribes to as a description. So music is absolutely that. The emotion coming in, the emotion pouring out is is exactly that same cycle. There's nothing different. The only difference is that one is very meticulously trying to represent that cycle, whereas the other one is on the cycle doing it. But the representation of the cycle is also on that cycle doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So it is.
You're talking about like model development,
Yeah.
yeah,
Model development and just in general this conversation in general.
which happens in every domain. Like this is what it is to be a professional, quote unquote, is to have a model of your business and develop it, whatever it is you do in life.
Yeah, and the allusion to cancer, for example, is in the same sense, in that all of that energy gets siphoned into processes that are destructive to the full
Mhm.
body of the organism. Whether
Right.
it's social, whether it's biological.
Kind of like it's always hard to find the words for it, but like not you don't want to say like self-justified, but like that's also model description too, potentially, right? It's like, what is it said, usually like a SOTS type term,
If we are using the word justified
Like,
from axiological point of view, then no.
to
If
to
not,
exist,
then yes.
like in and of itself, that's one that's on a higher layer of abstraction.
That's an
But you would
that's
say something
emergence.
exists for its own sake. That would be another way to say what I'm talking about. That the tumor exists for its own sake. It's not concerned. It's not a part of helping anything else.
A tumor is funny in the sense that it exists apart from itself, because it's all process and no coordination,
Right. No isomorphism. That's
right?
what we're
Whereas
looking
the
for.
whereas the organism is also all process, but all organization.
Mhm.
Even
So-
the chaotic parts are used to organize parts, right? Like any reaction that might be like taking in place internally in your body is so controlled that even all of the chaotic elements of it are utilized and repurposed in such a way that it gives makes sense in the order of things that is emergent above that.
Like if you eat the wrong thing and you get a maybe allergic
We'll
reaction. somehow,
send an electric pulse across a nerve. It's a chaotic reaction. It's like done. It's like an explosion, right? Like there's no once it goes, it goes.
Mhm.
You can't stop it.
Right, and that nerve is attached to some sensor or whatever, and maybe
Yeah,
picking
all of that
up
chaos
on
is,
foreign object, and
now all of that chaos is harnessed as a form of signals.
right, which are supposed to isomorphically match to what's being sensed there and its purpose in the body at a higher layer.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
chaos made
as
into
opposed
order.
to a tumor, right? Again,
Yeah, and the tumor will lack all of that central coordination that tells it, oh, this process is for this process is for that. No, it's just, and this is what the market is doing. It doesn't give a flying fuck about the centralized element for which it is functioning for. It doesn't exist in its parameters of operation whatsoever.
mm-hmm.
That's the dichotomy, if you will, between the polymorphic machine and the market machine. The polymorphic machine only has self to present, and so it's a polyglottic quine. In that sense, there's only the self in that, and the only thing that emerge outside of the self are represented within the self, and so on it goes, and so on it goes. It's just itself in itself and itself in itself. So the model always speaks about itself, whereas the system always speaks about everything but itself.
Its processor. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah. Very interesting.
You want to touch on the center of the universe stuff? Do you have a take?
Did we? Where were we going?
Well, we were.
I tried writing some stuff down.
So, Ideally, we were going to try to merge the language of the domain building with iterating over the languages that all of the primordial archetypes have,
Right.
and then all the
Initially, you were going to go through the stack. Remember, we were going to review a little bit. We got.
I feel like if we went through that exercise,
it's going to take up the rest of the time again.
It's going to take up the rest of the time, and I don't think we're going to have concrete languages except for maybe ideas of what they are going to be. And I don't know if that's going to bring us any closer to doing that. What I do want to state, at least, is that that's the direction it needs to go. Like how it's purposed, right? A polymorphic language that interplaces all these various domains, and we have these specific domains to take care of.
To me, it's like at the low level, it's like a tool set for how to describe these different domains. And then it's a tool set of domains, like the primordial archetypes, right? And those are being, again, used as tools to different larger domains, like the personal, the corporate, the state.
How do you deal with uncertainty from the perspective of, what was it? What was the other lower uncertainty archetypes?
Entropy?
Resource management, was it? No.
Risk management.
Risk management, that's the one. So, like, using the language of uncertainty to describe risk management.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then using the language of risk management to describe whatever the next...
And personally, it's called doubt, but then it's corporate, it's risk management.
Yes. So in this case, not only would you use uncertainty, you would use the language of doubt on top of uncertainty to describe the risk management language itself. So like it's all going to flow together.
And then like regulation or whatever it was for the state.
And that way everything is built off of itself rather than arbitrarily tagged on.
We're creating this like seemingly giant stack of languages on the structure of languages, right?
Which are also one language at the same time.
Because they all collapse into the most fundamental descriptor language. Right. If you want to.
Right. The key is that all that polymorphism is like in the base language, in the collapsed language, it could mean this, but it could mean that, but it could mean this, but it could mean that, going back upwards. So there's that many-to-many relationship that we are so fond of.
Right. And this kind of harkens back to our just recent discussion of the APS.
Harkens back.
Doesn't it? The APS and having a simplified, unified meta-language version of reality, if you will, it makes it so much easier to organize your own thoughts going forward, but also to work with others in this way.
The image I like for the APS, to contrast the two situations, is this. With the systemic, everything is about all the other things. What you get is like a tiny little core with a lot of branching. And as these branches meet, they crush against each other, break each other apart, because they're, crusty. In the second image, what you have is an enlarged core with very few branches coming out that never seem to meet each other, because as soon as they get any sort of length,
it goes back into
the core.
So you have like how molten body in space can have layers of different stuff, right? Like the crust of Earth. It's kind of like viewing the same thing but at different layers.
Yes.
Densities or whatever.
Right. And that gives you, again, the polyglottic Quine relay picture more than it does
it's
all the other algorithms.
Simpler way to think about things, I guess. That's kind of the idea. And the idea of being able to break things down in the moment.
Yeah.
So to look at your dream, observe your dream, notice that it's actually a thing being fed back and constructed as you go, as you experience it through the senses. Right, like the small chart, as we called it. Right, the step-by-step process.
Here's a direct example of what I'm talking about. Yes. Sorry, not to negate what you're
More
saying.
direct, go
not
for
to
it.
negate what you're saying, but
Be more concrete if you
a
want.
more specific example of this is how we always have triads. This is a triad. That is a triad. That is a. There's this triad repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating, and it's the same triad.
It's a language.
So it's like this.
We
core,
found that early.
but
on,
because
I
it
guess.
has these words and those words and those words and those words, it's very polyglottic, if you will. So it can mean this, it can mean that, it can mean this, but it's the same triad. How does it do that? So there's that.
And it's because that way, because if we look at like through the neurochemical operating system stack, we have those layers, the mimetic, abstract, concrete, which gives us those three, and concrete and plus.
Sure.
There you go. Right? That gives us our four, if you will.
Which we used to call the fourth one out, right? Odd one out.
Which is maybe an unrelated. Well, it's a related concept potentially. That's always described.
Whenever we get a three, there's always a fourth that is the combination of all three. That was the oddity of it. It's not a different layer. But it is. Because the three operate independently, and yet you have another layer that's like, no, they don't. Anyway,
Right.
that's a
that's
tangent.
correct. No, not at all.
But the idea of the triad and the fourth one out, showing up here,
Right.
there, and
That's
there.
that's kind
what
of
makes
points to this idea of fundamental language
Yeah.
being reused to emerge new language constructs at higher layers, quote unquote.
But but in such a way that doesn't make them apart from the lower layer, therefore not
Right.
distinct in their own world.
Right, because ultimately our map is describing life itself, the self, right? If we believe in cause and effect, that things are happening on a molecular levels and all this kind of stuff, right? You drop a pencil and it makes a huge noise, but doesn't overload the mic.
Just try it again. Maybe it'll float up.
Cause and effect.
Damn it! Works every
I
time.
wasn't expecting that.
That was a pretty hard red line right there.
You did it. You found the threshold. Apologies. Now I have to apologize.
Well, I mean, they saw me drop the pencil.
Right there, waiting for
there
it.
There was preparation. I was slow.
You gave fair warning. I'll give that. Although not for the first drop, but that's okay.
All right. Well,
Just don't touch that wire.
I think if we can spend some time shooting the shit.
Which we can.
Well, I guess, given the time frame, I think we should.
We got about like an hour ish. I thought, oh
what-
damn, I never plugged it in, that's why. Go on.
Well, the idea of what didn't you plug in?
This camera. I just wanted to show the mess of wires through which we're connecting today. Thought it was
Just cause.
interesting, and in which Enya should not touch with the pencil. It shouldn't touch that. It's very fragile.
My fragile little lives.
Fragile.
What was I saying? We have some time, so I'd like to shoot the shit about the idea of the center of the universe.
Okay.
Because I don't know if your life has this experience within it, but I was told many times throughout it that I'm not, in fact, the center of the universe.
Which is wrong, obviously.
Did
you flip him the bird?
No, because I believed them, unfortunately.
Oh, yes.
It's only now that I've come to realize that, in fact, yes, I am
Mm-hmm.
the very center
Right.
of the universe. Now, That
qualify
doesn't
that.
that doesn't mean that nobody else is the center of the universe. It means everybody is the center of the universe.
Obviously.
Not their universe, though. Not theirs.
Just the universe.
The universe. And
But not the center of their universe.
it's not
What's
theirs.
the distinction?
It's not theirs.
Oh, okay, like an ownership. Right.
Yeah, it doesn't belong to anybody. The point isn't about like some, I'm better than you kind of a thing, because as I've just clearly said, everybody else is also the center of the universe. So that's
Not their universe.
not theirs.
The universe.
The.
Get it straight.
But it's actually a pretty simple point.
Okay, go
And
on.
it sounds.
So everybody
it
is
actually
the
sounds-
center of the universe.
It sounds more dramatic than what it actually is alluding to. For one,
Isn't it just obvious?
for one, subjectively, perception-wise,
Subjectively. Where else is the center?
perception-wise,
100 million miles that
it's
way?
all happening in that.
Sure, okay,
in-
so that's subjectively, it's a fine. Okay, now objectively,
And objectively, it's just an isomorphism and a quite nice poetic scene in the fact that no matter where you are, what location you are in the universe, the way it moves around you suggests that you're
Mhm.
at the center. And if you were
Right.
to move, to relocate within that space, anywhere within
which
the
is
universe,
always happening.
you would
It'll
still.
update. In other words, your actions and motions through the nervous, through the neurochemical, through the nervous, that's what you immediately could quantify, if you will,
The only.
and say,
It's the only thing.
okay,
you can
I'm gonna
quantify.
let's take a poll. Where are things happening? Like, where is the universe totally happening right now? Okay. Oh, it's only my senses. Well, I guess I must be the center objectively.
In that sense too.
Right.
But that's more of the subjective notion. But,
Right.
but at the same time,
That's the only objective kind of
the objectivity
like,
comes to
in the scientismistic way sense of it.
well, the scientismistic way. What a word. Is to point out that if you were to exchange your XYZ coordinates for another set of XYZs, nothing about that picture would change. Everything is moving away from you in the exact same way as it would have been if you're in the center.
Are you talking about universal expansion, like expansion of the stars?
Yeah.
Right.
It sets up the stage in such a way that no matter where you're located in such a set expansion, you're in the middle of it.
Mhm. Right. And like
And like I said, it's a poetic thing. It's not meant to
like also like Einstein's relativity and all that says the same thing basically. Like
right.
about,
Whatever frame of reference you're coming from is what's
Right.
going to give you the answers you're
like
looking for.
the thought experiment of staying on a planet versus traveling on a ship the speed of light and coming back.
All of that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kind of puts us objectively at the center, the observer at the center, right?
So why say this? Because all my life, I've been told that I am not, in fact, the center of the universe. Right?
Uh-huh.
So it's more of a reactionary sort of thing, but
I didn't get told that too much, personally. But I think for probably,
well, I guess I jabber on a little bit more.
I think you may have asked for it a little bit.
Ask for it is
It's
a strong
it's a
word,
very
yeah.
strong.
Suggestion. And what I didn't do is note reactions properly.
Mm-hmm. And
We see
carry
that-
along contextually, concretely.
We've seen this happen to me today already. Anyway,
Yeah,
be
I
that,
can relate
that
to
as
it.
it may,
Everybody likes to hear themselves talk.
Be that as it may, the value of actually backtracking and reversing the statement is really to fix perspective, mastery, coherence, progression. Every one of those types of things, focus, they're focused on what? The self.
We must cup the balls.
Which, yes, we must cup the balls.
Yep.
But the point being is that none of these things revolve around anything else except you, the member, the guild, the network, the proximity. All of these are from the self outward. You are the center outward.
So isn't it interesting how people think about saving the world, but really, in light of this type of perspective, you can think, well, I can save my world, and then, it's like there's a big change there, right? And that resonates, and you can just make your world better. You can.
And does that make you a selfish person at that point? Here's a kicker. Because a lot of people will be like, well, you're just going in it for yourself.
Well,
But this is coherence. This is...
yeah. In this context, right? That's kind of the bigger picture. With awareness, you are that emergent element. You are existing on that higher language domain, right?
You are that better
even to be
universe.
doing market activities.
You are that better universe. So
Right.
all that power that the system has over you,
Yeah, so it's like the question, like, is it
You are
do you
the
have to
universe.
change the world, whatever that even means, right?
you
Yeah.
are the world.
Right. So from this perspective, it's pretty just satisfying in itself, right?
And not to tread too much into the solipsistic side of things. Like, we're not talking about, like, completely forgetting that there is another world out there, because there is an isomorphism, poetic as it may be, to the objectivist side. There's a whole
Of course, yeah.
correlation that has to be addressed.
This thing has to be called a term of some sort.
Which?
Like,
What?
Whenever-
What?
when we-
What thing?
we encounter this idea where, like, even in religions, you want to oppose something because it seems bad, but merely it's just the yin and the yang. You know what I mean? Like that. What is it to have to deal with that? What's the term called?
Duality, usually.
When
That's usually so. Let's call Abrahamic religions taking duality as a fact, whereas Eastern religions mostly for the.
I can
I'm
see that. Yeah,
I'm
you're right.
roughhousing here.
You're right. No. The even the word, like, and duality is kind of an insult, in some sense. Just to have oppositions in the dream. Essentially, it's a dream game.
Well, as soon as
usually.
you say dual and non-dual, what do you have?
Two.
With that, I'll be right back. You get a duality straight up front, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I thought that there should be a term or a word for that thing that happens when it's like, no, I don't mean like oppose that. I don't mean that it's bad, but like pointing out the ontological matrix. Like the matrix isn't bad. That's literally like just a generic language for society in how we interact through images, basically, like through simplified shortcuts and all that. That's how society works.
If I may,
It's not bad,
what you're looking at,
but it gets abused. So it's like,
so, if I may, what you're looking
I wish there was
for,
a term for it.
what you're looking for is a term to denote, well, we have a situation in which we have two sides, and we're trying to find the coin of which those two sides are of. Is that a fair metaphorical sentiment? So you're saying like this side is not bad.
A way to
because
get past it without opposing it. It's like just because you describe the negative, it doesn't mean that I'm railing against it. I'm just trying to illuminate it.
right,
You know what I'm saying?
as part
But
of a
it's
whole.
taken as to be avoided. I don't know.
Right. Well,
It's a landmine of sorts.
So it's trying to find something. It's trying to find a way to create a non-dichotomous exposition for a dichotomy,
Sure. Yeah.
finding the coin for the two
Which
sides.
is tough because even if you find it for yourself, it doesn't mean it's going to work. Or in the moment, it'll be taken up, right? That's why it needs a term, I think. Demonization or something. It's demonization. The point of I know it's bad, but that's a term, potentially. The point of exploring the ontological matrix isn't to say that the matrix is bad. In other words, to demonize it. But when you expound upon the matrix, people take it as a demonization. But it's not meant to be captured in as the soul of a bad thing to be avoided. It's giving information as to the fundamentals of what's building up. So that can work for a term for now, I think.
Which part of this is the term needs
Where it's
need to
being
capture?
interpreted. It's being interpreted
As demonized.
as do not touch. Meanwhile, this happens so many times everywhere in describing the model. Like, it's everywhere.
Aversion. That which goes into the aversion bucket.
Right. Okay. Correct. Yeah. It's not meant to evoke aversion.
But it does, if not said correctly.
Right. Cool. So that's an update to the demonization tag term. It's actually just aversion.
Aversion, hate, anger. Where the narratological
Right.
elements.
It's not meant to evoke that stuff.
But it, and yet it,
It
can.
does.
Yeah,
Can
it
and
has the
does.
potential to. Yeah.
Especially through this
Let's
automatic
call it strong potential.
the punishment reward cycle
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff.
Let's call it strong potential for causing it. Like, it doesn't have to, obviously,
Very
but
strong,
it
yep,
can.
correct.
And it usually does.
Right. I just thought that's good to note, good to explore, because that's a common problem of expounding upon the model, if you will, or whatever. And it's kind of a pitfall for the participant in that they feel aversion to something that's described that sounds bad, like a machine-like behavior. Well, we're like biological machines.
This
in
is
ways.
this is the same discussion, I think, that falls under the whole Dark Night of the Soul. If you take away the system and there's nothing to fall back on at all.
Right. So you're talking about that ultimate fear and ultimate aversion. That okay, you're the listener thinks that we may be critiquing the matrix itself, the ontological matrix itself. That ability to connect socially and through fast snap judgment images and all that, and have an economy happen without even thinking about it, you're all meeting each other's needs, right? Yeah, yeah, I think.
Well, no, it's good that you're mentioning gift economy because this is not a light premise, and it's also not light from the ancient times as well. Buddhism itself, the path of Buddhist practice is as follows: it's generosity, aka your gift economy. So
Right.
free-handed gift giving.
And what is free-handed?
Followed
Touch the network.
followed by virtue. So you don't even have the path of virtue laid out in front of you before you even have the path of generosity laid out in front of you, because it's the most accessible one. It's easier to give away an object than it is to become
It
a
is a
different
really
person.
great practice, isn't it?
So that's why it starts there. So even in the Buddhist sense, gift economy is the first and foremost premise as to what needs to happen between individuals, even between the individual and themselves. You have to be able to freely gift yourself as well. I mean, that does sound selfish, but it's not. It's you when you need to sleep, you sleep. That's giving. It's rather
Sure.
than staying
Yeah.
up and working on some fucking project for somebody else.
Sleep is very accessible.
When you're hungry, eat. Just
Right.
it's as simple
Right,
as
right.
that.
But it's like it's all bound into the ego and your bank account. Can you afford McDonald's or whatever?
Or do I eat in the
Swipe
middle?
the card. Oh no, you can't.
Do I eat in between or running from this place to that place?
Uh-huh. True stories. Oh, there's Eon. Now we're live. How he sees Eon with us. There is 2 concurrent viewers. One is maybe us. I guess. Probably.
Hello. Penelope.
Now it's the 5 of us.
So yeah, a language to talk in all tongues, the centrality of the universe, and everything happens from the center, which is a nice, by the way, allusion to an older tradition that I've shunned, more or less, up until this point. If you think of this whole centrality point, like how you are the center of the universe,
Uh-huh.
and you think about the concepts of Brahman and Atman, Brahman being the universe and all its the consciousness of the universe,
Sure.
and Atman being the self. Well, here you go. The universe is Brahman, the centrality of it, the you, is Atman.
Okay.
Is there a distinction between the two? Not really. That statement, you're the center of the universe out of which everything flows outwards, the universe being Brahman, the self being Atman.
Maybe it is kind of like maybe useful, powerful, potentially meditation, like to think about: am I the center of the
It's a
of the
context.
universe?
It's a context. It is a true context, but it's still dream. And it is the same point that the Buddha made.
Of course.
You can realize this, but that's not the end of the road. That's not the end.
Mm-hmm.
Not that. That is
No.
still dream.
Right.
Because it affirms a self, it affirms the cosmos, it affirms all of these things, and that's dream.
Right. And from the Buddhist sense, we'd want to causally connect back down through the layers of language, through the domains of the body.
And this is one of those ways, yes. So here you go. We've uncovered Hinduism through Buddhism using Portal Mountain. I mean, obviously these are lofty claims.
That was some pretty. That was it's kind of like some old thoughts that you've definitely held to for quite some time. That
Probably just the
about
materialize now.
Hinduism.
They materialize now because there's better language for it. Right, like once
Right, yeah,
once
yeah,
the
yeah.
terminology is in
Mhm.
place, it
Yeah,
becomes
yeah.
so much more simpler
No,
to
absolutely.
use it.
I see how it when you describe it, when we're able to describe it now, it's much more simpler feeling. Anyways, dream moment.
Yeah, and
You
it's
know,
and
like,
it's and it still
The,
pertains.
like I am the universe, I am God, God is within me, etc. Like these are still
there
stories.
it's all there. It is all laid out,
These are
plain sight.
it's no argument, but it also these are dreams constructed out of a process happening continually. Watch that too. Check that out.
Hence, that's not the end of the road. So it's almost like no matter how you slice it, that cannot be the end of the road. That is not the final realization. That is a realization. But it's still a dream.
Yeah, I always thought that was kind of intriguing to compare religion, if you will.
The most useful discussions of it I find to be more in the past than in the present. When people actually wanted to know these things rather than to use the outcomes of these things.
Sure.
Because right now it's just utility. It's not discovery. It's just utility. Nobody's doing what we're doing with Buddhism, like that we're aware of.
That we're aware of, right?
It's a fair qualifier. There might be somebody also sitting there trying to like wrap their heads around it and going,
Wishing that somebody did it or would do it.
or somebody to connect to and speak to.
100%. We're getting there, though. Speaking of which, kind of interesting. In 3 days, I know I have to make an announcement of the startup of a certain project from which I can find the full title here.
Mind you, I have no idea what you're talking about.
It will be the Portal Mountain 2023 World Summit. So since we're just shooting the shit, the idea behind these World Summit is basically you get a bunch of people together who you know are creators, who like to do stuff, and you all just kind of support each other, and you support each other. It's a springtime, ideas are popping up, and you want to create something before the end of summer, so before September, essentially. That's the idea. And it's kind of like we hype each other, support each other, give likes. Like, this is kind of, I'm having visions, right? It's been building since last year. Remember the artifacts as well?
Oh,
that
shit.
board that hit you in the back of the head? That's been carved out into things which...
I have a thought I don't want to forget.
Don't forget it then. Say it. But yeah, this the World Summit. What's your thought?
I had a bathroom epiphany,
Okay.
as I often do.
Right.
And I was thinking about prophecy and the word prophecy and the word accelerationism together.
Okay.
And it strikes me rather interestingly that they're very linked. Accelerationism is a form of prophecy.
Also, hyperstition.
Yes.
That sweeps it up right there.
I'm not talking about like the religious prophecy, right? Like I'm just saying the whole notion of carrying something all to its logical conclusion
There's Eon. Oh my god. Oh no, there's chat. What did they say? Just popped in talking about polarities. Yeah, Jacob, buddy, and Eon. We had burritos already, big time.
I'll take a bite for you, buddy.
Demonization. How is it? How is it?
Oh, fucking great.
You saw nothing, Eon. He's looking though.
So good.
Yeah, I know. Try to keep it friendly and all that. Beers are pretty much accepted universally. So cheers, cheers. And there was two, thanks to our peeps. But yeah, prophecy, accelerationism, hyperstition. Hyperstition to me is only potent if it's isomorphic, which means that it's basically like the conclusion, the proper conclusions of the commodification of life, which is to basically
I think it's linked to emergence.
throw the guild on top of all that. What? Emergence, yeah.
Yeah, hyperstition is clearly more of the vehicle, if you will, for emergence on these layers.
To me, it's...
Then by these I mean then there anything from shared and on.
It's not that you have a perfect copy of the upper language, but that you've intuited or something, somehow it's come to you enough of the language to like kind of cobble it
Yeah.
until it bootstraps.
Yeah, nobody's talking about like being academically inclined to do rigorous representational work.
But yet lots of things have gone in. Like you could look at
Collectively.
Christianity or like the Bible as a hyperstitional object, kind of potentially pulling something.
Yeah, but all of these survive insofar as they keep feeding the population. So it has only a limited window
Right.
into
Very
which
tough.
in which it operates. It's less so now. The window's bigger. We're seeing that with social media more.
Ah, meme. So yeah, I was saying with the so that's hyperstition. With the 2023 Portal Mountain World Summit, the idea of it is, as what's been last year, just to connect people in projects, to watch each other, just give each other likes, like be a team and like pull something forward from our ideas now and our visions and like support and encourage each other on our own projects.
Well, this is
We each who
usual.
are chosen, if you will, or if you like you're self-chosen, like submit, if you will,
It's like a hackathon.
your project, who you are, what you're doing, like even make a video and like let's support you and each other. Like that's my vision. I don't know how that happens or starts, but like we did something last year and like it was for me like the writing of the book. Like and a lot happened in those months.
Where is that at, by the way?
It's very developed, but as far as content, like it's kind of like you just got to jump on these things and create a snapshot and roll with it. But yeah, of course, I've been busy with all kinds of things lately, jamming guitar related stuff.
So I think I have more to say here about prophecy. And
What's
stuff.
the theme or scope of projects? It's basically in my mind that the people who are right now, I'll say in the World Summit chat, the dev chat, the masters chat, if you will, there's about 13 people. Anybody's there is entitled to fully, like, you've got, like, from my view, I see you, I've seen your work, I've seen what you do, and like you deserve full support. And so like let's pull a bunch of people together and just support everybody, right? That's kind of my vision. Anybody pulled into that chat was for a reason, because I've seen something, right? And I understand that puts me as kind of like a leader, responsibility, and all that.
Yeah,
But
you need what's called a meta schedule inserted into this, because otherwise you don't have a way to organize priorities.
so Eon is asking what the scope of the project is, and I'm just saying that
Worldwide.
no, it's
I'm
simply
sorry.
it's simply that I trust you. I trust you, whoever is there,
So-
and whatever you submit as your project, I'm gonna like.
So-
I think to end like say August, end of August.
So
it's
you're
gotta
saying
be
this-
done by August,
So you're saying
mid-August.
they're defining the scope.
Yeah, it's about just
Okay,
we all have projects.
Then-
I don't want to
no,
judge your project.
So say it. So say it. The scope is defined by the person doing whatever they're doing.
Right. Yeah,
So-
exactly.
So to answer your question is that
As far as like what's allowed, that's what I kind of perceive.
I think
being asked.
what Brian is trying to say is that especially for someone like you, Ian, you are in control of the scope.
Which
Yeah.
makes perfect sense.
Like there's no point in limiting that.
To just help each other, because I know from my experience I've had projects and I wish people would have helped more or like had more hype and just would have felt better.
Well, what do you think?
I just
feel?
want to give each other hype.
What do you think
sort
I
of.
feel with my projects in the coding space?
Right. And two, like I don't know how to program, so it's
Showcase.
tough for me.
I don't have
Showcase.
any
Yeah,
inputs.
so in August, let's say like let's call it like mid August is like the deadline or something. And then say last week of August, before September, like anybody from this group who has it, like the idea originally was like a world summit idea where you would come together, like so like in this last week, let's say the last week of August, it's like all projects have been completed to their best or submitted, and you'd have a review process and all that. Like let's talk about, maybe there's certain weeks leading up to that where it's like, okay, you should probably have your project, your idea like almost solidified, and then in the final weeks it's kind of like there's maybe, I don't know, like organized critique and like helping each other or connection. Like how can we take like maybe there should be stages to this. And I think there should be was definitely one of the constraints that I had considered, is that to submit a project you have to for it to qualify by August. You need to have let's say a video that summarizes your project and what it's all about, so that during this summit, like it's like say a week-long thing where we all bring our products and like say how can they interact and talk about them and showcase them.
So yeah.
And at the end of
there's
this,
a
like
showcase.
let's say a last day or a weekend, like the final weekend is like showing these videos where you're showcasing what you've got, what your tech is, and like who you think you can work with. Now you've talked with people and like showed and shared, and like where do you see your project going forward? Like I don't know the exact parameters of it, but I know that like we need to get together.
So I'm thinking yes. As far as to answer the question more directly, there is a showcase of some kind, like just to inform, right? Like how else are people going to know?
According to the Portal Mountain myth, these projects are being developed at other mountains. These are the shining lights from other mountains in the Portal Mountain range
Right.
that we're connecting together.
So my guess is, to answer that question more directly, is it would have to have a translation,
Sorry,
right? Like that's what it amounts to. Like it doesn't have to word
a translation.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like worded in Portal Mountain terms specifically, but if you were to look at it from the perspective of of Portal Mountain, you would find all the pointers that you would be looking for. So you could analyze what's given and be like, okay, well,
like
yes,
should be able to mesh,
exactly,
like, mesh
yeah.
in with the other
the
projects.
the exact
and
nomenclature.
again, this is
not
like
going
totally,
to work.
it's on faith that I've seen something in people. That's why I brought them together out of all my years of this online activism, if you will.
Yeah. So it's as formal as it is informal. So the level of formality with which you're looking for is also corresponding with the level of creativity. So you're not looking for
Sure.
strict guidelines or any of that anything
like-
from that point of view. It's
and I would
more
even
like,
say,
let's
like-
see what we have and let's look at it from a holistic
Like,
point of
I
view.
want something, like, I want it to end with a bang. In other words, for people to put together some sort of video, it doesn't have to be a video themselves, right? But like some kind of video presentation that, on this final weekend we can say, like, let's look at everything, and like,
And what it means.
You and I will get together here at the
Yeah, let's look
on
at
the couch and
let's look at everything and see how it all fits together, how it doesn't, how
Like, 'cause-
how it could, how it won't.
right.
Every one of
Sure,
those
yeah. Let's
possibilities.
give critique and all that. So you and I are kind of stepping up, if you will, as commentators of the process, right? I can count on you for that. And this weekend, right? Like, it's a big weekend. Let's say
as
we
self-
go through the
as-
submissions, if you will, the projects, and like figure out what's the future, like what's the next year looking like.
as selfishly as I feel about Portal Mountain, it's a very selfless project to begin with, right? So, with that in mind, I will have. I probably will have.
It makes sense.
I will have a bias. However, I will try to gear it towards the
Collaborate.
as much universality as I possibly can muster.
Agreed.
Can I make my point? Because I had a really
About
good
what?
one.
Sure.
Prophecy and.
I thought you were, that was it.
Oh no! I was going to distinguish between hype.
Prophecy and accelerationism.
Yes, and I was going to distinguish it away from.
There's two types of prophecy.
Hyperstition. I was going to distinguish it away from hyperstition. And the way I'm looking at prophecy and accelerationism being more in line with each other and not with hyperstition is that both accelerationism and prophecy make use of the existent underlying system, whereas hyperstition is making a new system out of the old system. So there is no new system on an upper layer, which hyperstition inevitably involves, like the mythology and all of that stuff. So what I'm saying is that prophecy and accelerationism are more congruent with, I seem to like this word today, with taking things in the language that they're presented in and taking them to the conclusion.
Translating?
To the conclusion. Whereas hyperstition is a way to use that language to build something very new.
Jacob there. Wow. Plan or an idea. It's supposed to be kind of implemented in some manner. Wait. Oh, that was we already read that. Yeah. Jacob just said hyperstition. That's all.
Yeah. Sorry, I am kind of losing my head here. It's been quite a few cans of beer over here, so I might.
Well, we're in the chilling phase, anyways.
Yeah, But I think there is a distinction to be made between prophecy, accelerationism, and hyperstition, in that hyperstition seeks to take what there is and create a layer on top of it using it, whereas accelerationism
This is what I call true
takes
accelerationism.
what it is and just runs it to its natural conclusion.
Yeah.
Without
so
giving the overarching myth.
You're right. This I have called the difference between accelerationism, quote unquote, and true accelerationism, which is always bound up in the isomorphism of the stack.
So why not use hyperstition for the true accelerationism
Because
part?
what's hyperstitionism?
Hyperstition is...
Im.
There's no M. We have never made it an ism.
Okay, fine.
I mean, that never came up before.
No, I'm just trying to think if that's congruent with classical, if you'd call it, uses of the word term hyperstition.
It's myth making in that once the myth is made, its reality is already observed. So, noting the existence of Portal Mountain makes Portal Mountain exist.
But that reality could just be that everything is destroyed. Accelerationism. Let's run it into the ground. That's the reality that's going to be happening.
See, this is just taking what is and running it.
Yeah, that's what I said.
But taking what is and rearranging it into another layer on top. Creating a layer
so
that
my problem is I don't know the word hyperstition has always been used in the isomorphic sense, and I don't think so, but I'm not sure. If
Okay,
it was, then I'm mistaken. And
another way of looking at it is
would totally take that.
hyperstition is myth making, and accelerationism is myth running. So myth making the code. Acceleration, running the code.
Just in the isomorphic sense that something is emergent, therefore you're building. But that feels like a stretch in how you explained it. Like, hyperstition to be useful to me, true accelerationism has to be isomorphic.
So, holism. The myth in the hyperstition has to be a whole, right? Like all of its individual parts are its whole. Accelerationism does not have a whole. It's just the parts running the course of the algorithms.
Right, and that's what I'd call conventional accelerationism. Ian mentions there's traditionally noted left and right accelerationism. So this is, again, that kind of political bullshit. One way or another to just make things happen. It's already going bad this way, so let's make it super bad, and then it'll be over faster, or whatever, kind of like these
Is that how he meant
ideas.
it, though?
Left and right? I don't know.
I would like to actually wait until I know more about what you meant by that. Because I can see accelerationism being used by both sides, but that's like an oppositeness. Okay.
Right.
We'll be right back.
And yeah, essentially, I'm thinking that it's not isomorphic. Hold on, yo, Zhenya. Jacob says hyperstition is a positive feedback circuit, including culture as a component, which helps explain why you're discussing medium and polarity in regard to receptivity. Might have to read that again.
Mm-hmm. I'll be right back.
Hyperstition as a positive feedback circuit. Well, even the idea of accelerationism is kind of feeds into itself. Do what you're doing faster and harder. One is a circuit, the other is haywire. not contained, i.e. hyperstition and accelerationism. But with that, we're going to take a short break and be right back. Eon. I mean, accelerationism, I believe, was coined by Land, who also has been quoted saying that left-right dichotomy is a social objectivity. Social objectivity.
Hold on.
Oh, yep. Pausing.
All right. Oh no, you're never off the point. We need to consider all of these points because we're using these words, and if we're going to be using these words, we are going to at least give some credit where it's due.
There's
right?
automatic connotations that people think of, right? So to appropriate properly, one must be careful.
Yeah. I think what I'm trying to bring out into this discussion is that accelerationism has more to do with prophecy than hyperstition. Because hyperstition is more of an insight into the construct of how things are and giving it an overarching architecture. Whereas accelerationism is not so much as giving it an arc in architecture, but just like watching the process unfold.
Yeah, like I agree that
And I think that's
that
what the
should be a
difference is.
distinction, and that's what creates the difference of isomorphism and dysmorphism.
Yeah, for sure that's going to be like completely laced in there. And the funny fact is that you get very different accelerationisms based on whatever hyperstition you're working with, right?
Sure. Burrito, burrito.
That is mainly to say that your hyperstition is going to do control what activity is available to you, and that's going to force accelerationism into whatever direction it's going into.
Hmm. You're trying to evoke like the cancer process, the runaway process.
I'm pointing to the machine archetype. That between the personal individual and the organization of the corporation, there sits a set of algorithms. That set of algorithms dictates what happens within the accelerator. Dictates whatever happens in the acceleration portion. However, if the hyperstition is changed and the state of things has changed, the behavior is therefore changed in the direction of the acceleration changes. This reminds me of a Buddhist scripture in which the Buddha was asked the outcome of a specific situation, and he gave his answer, but the outcome was completely different. And then they were like, aren't you supposed to be like all-knowing and all that shit? And the response was, the conditions under which the response was given back then
have changed.
Would have given that result. But the conditions have changed, and therefore the result have changed. So the answer was not wrong. The situation simply shifted. Had the conditions remained, right?
Right.
So it's this is what prophecy and acceleration is all about. Accelerationism is the ability to say, given this circumstance, this is how it will unfold. Whereas whereas hyperstition is the insight into the inner workings of the how things are. Which may or may not be on point. That isn't to say it's gotta be right, it's just what it is.
Accelerationism denotes a mechanism which is doing the acceleration. This mechanism is debated. What is accelerated is agreed upon across the board.
Well,
right, that's the system can't see itself.
So I'll respond to this by saying, let me make sure.
That's it.
Right.
It's a common myth.
The mechanism.
It doesn't mean the myth user understands what myth is.
The mechanism behind it all is the algorithm involved. What is it that tells you you're going from input A and B to output X and Y? What is that? That is what drives accelerationism across, and that is the mechanism, the algorithm, the machine.
Right.
That is why it's possible.
Right.
That is why prophecy is possible to begin with. You assess what the machine does, and you extrapolate what it will do based on any input.
You mean even the social machine?
Anything that's denoted by a set of rules.
What society is doing, where it's going to go from here, should be pretty
Again.
easy. Like it's a calculatable.
Again, yeah, anything that is assessed by a set of rules. Like if you piss in a corner, you can expect to be
That's
brought
prophecy.
into a cage. Right? That is accelerationism. That is prophecy. That's what I'm talking about. Yes.
Pissing in the sink.
Corner, outside.
Same thing.
It's how I do.
Pissing where you're not supposed to. That's a form of accelerationism.
Yeah. So, I guess we're also appropriating the term, obviously. But again, it's only in the effort of making it mean something.
Like, the current usage of accelerationism is, let's fucking make everything even worse than it fucking already is. Just
Right.
so that things will get so bad that it'll collapse. And this is taken as like an intellectual position, even. Like, oh, I'm an accelerationist. No,
So-
you're not.
So our position.
Not a true acceleration. You're not a hyperstitionist. You're just a little baby playing in the park.
But yeah, but like, this is how we're going to bring meaning to the word. Acceleration will be, if we take the algorithm the system has given us, the machine archetype, the primordial archetype of the machine, and run it through its course,
Which we can do virtually.
what do we get?
We can virtually think about this.
Hence the tie with the word prophecy. What do we get, right? Like if you calculate this all out, what do you prophesize?
Right. Pissing in the corner would be considered a form of accelerationism if the state of being in the cage was seen as an inevitability.
True. And I use that example exactly because that is how it's seen. It is looked at as an inevitability in the current setup.
So
if
in
you
other
will.
words, it's sort of like an ironic.
So very
it's
true.
an ironic piss, if you will.
Very true. I apologize for the coughing. It'll happen a few more times. But yeah, it is an inevitability in the sense that this is how the rules of the machine are set up, right? Like, if you are caught pissing on the street, if you're caught pissing on the
Even
street,
ironically,
it's just what's gonna happen. It's like you can almost imagine it as being the final end result, or some fucking thing on the sex offenders list, just for good measure. Because pissing on the street is the same as harassing. I don't know who. Anyway, my own personal gripes against that.
well,
fucking
then it smells like
that-
piss, obviously. It's a not isomorphic act,
If you give us more nature, none of it will smell like piss at all.
right?
Give me a tree to piss on, that will not
Yeah.
smell like piss.
And herein lie the stacks of irony.
Give me concrete to piss on the other hand, yes, you're definitely gonna smell that shit. Anyway, I digress. As I'm sure everybody is entertained.
It's an important topic.
But I think the gist that we'll take away from today should be absolutely the fact that we are, in fact, the center of the universe.
Right. And then
And nobody can or shall say different. For reasons mentioned before.
like, if piss came from the center of the universe, wouldn't you just worship it?
Whenever you come across piss, are you not the one expressing the fact that there is piss here?
Well, you're getting serious now.
I told you. I told you. I mean, come on. It's nuanced as fuck. Yeah, I get it. I get that nobody wants to think this way. It's what do you call it?
Piss bottles are a sacred object.
They are when you're in a car. Holy shit.
Randonautic circles, yeah.
Dude, they're a sacred object whenever you're on a long ass trip across the country, man, and you know it.
Straight up jugs. 4-liter jugs.
Especially when it's illegal to.
I mean, gallon jugs. Sorry.
Especially when it's illegal to park on the side of the freeway. What the fuck are you gonna do?
Right.
It is a holy object, insofar that it serves a very, very human need. The piss jug, worship it appropriately.
It's to be respected.
For sure. So many of the
Like,
devices
you
that
just-
we actually
you know
need
that
to
a need-
respect
a
are
need was-
so low key.
A need was served.
So many of the devices that we should respect are so low key. The jug is one amongst them. There's another device that allows women to pee outside, standing up. For example, you wouldn't think that that's important, but my God, does that serve the same purpose as like not just being hankered
Right.
down by your biology? You know, whatever it is.
Yeah, everybody has to squat when they shit.
It's the universal.
That I won't deny.
One thing that's universal to all human beings is the asshole. Is there any more beer?
Sure, there is. I do believe.
That's actually one of Igor's favorite sayings. Everyone's got an asshole.
Wait. Oh, how considerate. To not being assholes.
To try.
Trying not to.
The piss funnel is a...
Transhumanism. I guess. I don't know anything about that, but apparently you can do it without a device. But
No, you
I've
can.
I've never tried because I can't.
All right, you
So-
can. Biology lesson for the male in the room, or the super male, whatever you want to call it, the one that doesn't know enough female anatomy.
Okay.
You can do it, and you will probably can do it for a specific amount, and then it gets all
And you still
Over
you
you.
can't shake it off.
and it gets all over you. So the idea of this thing is to simply wrap around the whole deal,
Yeah, I got
and
it.
funnel
I know
it.
there's a cup and like a thing sticking out,
And so the drippage is minimal.
right? Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, you can wing it, but probably this is better. The only ordeal is washing it
But
out
in
after.
the end, it's like, do you have to stand? Like, many men in many
context
countries
dependent. That's context dependent. and
almost don't stand ever to do anything. Just,
Context
why not? It's a
dependent.
seat. Have a seat.
It is more. It enlarges the opportunity spectrum of where you can relieve yourself. Let's put it that way. Without it, it's limited. With it,
Kind of
it's
private too. I
enlarged.
get it. Okay, but
It's just practicality.
let's.
It's easier with a hose.
Do we even have time to move on? We're at like probably the end. You know, Rad's gonna be here soon, so we're gonna be peacing out.
Yeah.
It's been like a short session, only just over 2 hours, so we're trying to maximize here, right?
You know what?
And
If we come across as understanding white cis males over the entire ordeal, then that's also a win. It's not a loss. I mean, the only people that would make fun of us is people who don't want to know what women are at all. I'm just saying.
you would know.
There's
No,
there's
but
enough there's enough experience there. Yes.
I'm remembering back to conversations months and months ago even. We haven't really delved into
Good old red
like
pillars.
pseudo-gender and all that
Oh yeah.
red pill stuff. We have quite a few sessions on that. You can look it up.
I think the only thing this should convey is that we get it. Don't experience it, but we get it. I mean,
Well, that's whether somebody gets it or not is a personal judgment, kind of from the center of one's own universe to say, what do I think about that person? And sometimes you seem to get evidence that yes, wow, indeed, this person is sensitive to his context and environment or whatever, somehow, which is weird or something, you know.
what is it? What is Ian jealous about? I missed that first part.
Jenya's day drunk. Eon's jealous.
Oh yeah. That's how I go.
The drip shaking method. You have to twerk. That's that's how to drip,
Yeah,
how
but
to drip it off.
But we're looking at a bigger.
So is it?
We're looking at it. Let's put it
maybe
this
a
way.
matter of skill. See, we're two guys
Okay.
talking about this who have no business even fucking speculating.
No,
So why don't
I have
we
some
move on
business.
to,
I have
like,
some
the next
mathematical
part?
business. Let's put it this way.
Thanks, Eon.
Let's address this question mathematically.
Shania, you're day drunk.
Yes, I am. This is why I'm addressing this question mathematically.
Okay. Well, carry on.
See, the issue is with surface area. It gets on more surface area when it's flat than when it's pointed. That's the discrepancy. You can twerk your ass all you want, but it's like spraying.
No, you're talking about having a hose that's away from your body.
Exactly.
Obviously.
So-
Okay, so that's like the basic.
So if you want to equate it to twerking, what you would have to do is piss all over your balls first, then twerk, and that's how we'll get to.
I don't know, I'm
a
just-
similar.
I don't want to speculate
Context.
because now it's like, okay, maybe some girls, women have gained a skills to like not get them wet all over their shit if they're pissing.
I don't think.
standing up.
I don't think we.
I don't know.
I don't think we've ventured into giving.
I'm not
advice.
interested in like.
I don't think we've ventured into
That's
giving
the only
advice.
way it can go. I'm not. I can't validate what you're saying or like even argue or anything like that. So
All you can do is say, okay, the cup exists, and it does.
well,
and it
I
does
agree,
what
I know why
and it
it's-
does that.
I
thing,
knew about
that
it
exact
before you
thing.
said it. I already know that.
It does that exact one thing. And there is a bit of a trade-off into having one versus the other in terms of equipment. That's really all there is to it. It's not a complicated deal.
We don't have the ability to go into the discussion that I want to with regards to that because there's no female present. So I'm not interested in further discussion.
Which part of it is a female necessary to like confirm? The surface
I already
area.
knew about the cup thing. I'm just saying there could be a skill where women can pee standing up. And they don't get piss all over their clothes. I don't know.
I suppose.
Has it
that-
happened? Has
I
one of them done it in all of time?
I suppose there's a possibility. It's
Okay.
just not in the realm of likelihood, given the architecture.
Now you're just a male.
Surface area. I mean, what are you gonna do about that?
It's not going to be on YouTube. So, like, I don't know what to do about this.
There's nothing to do.
Probably most women may not even have the skill.
It's
if
not
you will.
a skill.
I'm telling you, man, like, it's possible to pee standing up without this contraption of yours.
I already agreed.
But
with that.
but there's dribblings and piss all over your clothes.
Well, not necessarily clothes, but
right? Unless you have some kind of skill to it somehow. I don't know. I can't further the discussion without somebody who's tried it. See what I'm saying? Not even a woman, but a very select, special subcategory of who have tried peeing standing up.
Mm. No, I agree. It's not. There's no argument.
Right. So where can we take this discussion? Anywhere interesting, I can't do it. We've lost Jacob because of you. I'm kidding. Like 2 hours of discussion about this.
No, we'll just discuss anything. That's the issue. If it's an issue.
Well, sometimes, but
Well, there's nothing off limits. I don't
no,
think.
I get that point.
I-
Right.
There's
And
not.
then it's like up to my creativity
There's no
potentially now. Like
No, not necessarily. There's no there's no ill sentiment to the subject of the discussion to begin with.
mhm.
It's
Which can be dangerous.
Is
this the danger of the AI?
There's a full acknowledgement of the fact that
Danger of the
there is a
APS.
lack of
It
experience.
can get overloaded.
There's a personal lack of experience. Absolutely, that's part of.
Isomorphic female standing piss. That's the exact category I'm talking about. Where are you at on that? You've theorized that it could exist. Okay, we're good. We're fine.
No, the point is to be able to actually even say these things without, like,
Offending, triggering, just getting into political
I
politics.
can't, yeah, I'll never be female, I'll never be black, I'll never be this, I'll never be that.
Sexist comments. Just
Whatever-
like
whatever-
defensive
Whatever,
sound bites.
whatever it is, I can't be. I will never experience the world through that lens. That's acknowledged. Can I not think about these things and discuss them and understand more
Right.
about the world around me through
Yeah.
being wrong?
And this comes back to that.
not just being right, but through being wrong.
Zhenya, that APS thing of crustification, it makes our encounters with people, even if we want to view the world differently, everyone around us may not.
Yeah,
may
they
be
want to
stuck
jam you
in their
back
track,
into the fucking hole.
right. So
And
that's
I'm not
kind
doing
of like,
that.
This is the tall order.
And I'm not doing that. And this is what you just experienced, really, right now. Is I'm not doing that. Yeah, it's a weird subject. Obviously. Nobody says it's not. Nobody said it's not. But is this a subject that is impossible to talk about, just like in random, for whatever reason?
Ideological,
not?
political.
Am I putting somebody down by thinking, hey, there's
Right. Well,
there's a difference in surface area.
is that maybe like the classic identity politics type stuff where it's
It connects to that.
because you are male, you can't understand or talk about female or speculate or have a model.
There are certain
you can't
things-
develop a model about female because you're male.
There are certain things I will never experience.
Granted.
Flat out. I will never experience. Does that mean my ears are shut? I've never seen a person with that experience. I've never talked to a person with that experience that I can digest and
Right.
talk about afterwards. No, it doesn't mean any of that. It just means I didn't experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't. Why would anybody want to shut this conversation off
And
due to that?
This could be
only?
like a response to the argument of like intersectionality, I guess. Which you could say like that's a point, but that's used leveraged against people. Like, oh, you're not this many times
But if-
unprivileged or
But also, if I don't express and get feedback on this, how can I become more empathetic to the experience through the experience of others if I'm not able to talk about their
Right.
experiences.
Having it shut down.
Right. Like, what am I going to do with this pent up information that may be wrong? If I say it, somebody can tell me I'm wrong. I shouldn't say that. Oh, cool. I understand now where
Right.
the mistake was.
So it's like putting walls up between domains of culture.
Yeah.
Culture domains.
So this conversation was not
Can
exactly
we-
about women.
Can we
specifically.
expand our discussion about APS language stack into like above language domains and like domain language into culture domains?
Well, if you want to use this particularly
Right.
grotesque example,
And it's like each guild is a culture, I think, and they all intersect. Like the various guilds, conventional guilds.
oh yes,
like
there are their
Teachers
own.
Guild and all that.
Even the membership guild is its own culture. Even the fundamental guilds,
right.
in and itself, is its own culture. Like, I am the guild, right? Like,
Right.
even the network guild is its own culture. It's like, oh, where's all the other peeps are,
Right.
including myself.
Mm-hmm. So they should ideally be represented mythologically by a caricature,
Yeah.
a mythical comic character.
And the natural
ideal.
guild is like this archetype of the grandmaster, essentially itself, of like, this is how you do education, this is how you do immunity, this is how you do environment, right? Like, so there's like all these self-centered, if you will, architectures growing around. Like, every whole one is self-centered.
And weirdly, it comes as stories about these archetypal myths. In stories of like, oh, this happened and this happened,
every
and
self
this
is
is
a
what
myth.
this identity did through this
Every self
situation.
is a myth. Every self is a myth. Every myth is a narrative. Beginning, middle, end.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And every guild is a narrative due to that. It's the same conversation we had with Cameron of like, there's the myth of Cameron, there's the myth of Brian, there's the myth of Virginia.
Right.
And you hold a different myth of me than I hold a myth of me. And you hold a different myth of
Right.
you than I hold a myth of you.
And this relating into like the 33 myths discussion a little bit too. Just that
those are
that
those are extra.
there are all these like big myths that create our reality that we think we feel is real.
the belief in progress, the belief in merit, the belief in
Like the economy with the
belief in being nice.
the invisible hand of the market, like just balancing magically like values.
well, that's a cross myth. Like, if you were to subdivide it, like, there's a bunch of different myths that make this a reality. Right?
Sure, you're talking about like building emergence.
Well, for one, the myth of merit. If you do the work, the results will come. Right? The second one is the myth of the economy, the overarching hand of the market that makes things happen.
Yeah, that was the first one actually.
The myth of progress, the success of this project is an advancement of some kind.
Mm-hmm. These ideas
And
that make
these
us,
are just like off the top of my head.
it's like stories that explain away what we're doing altogether.
Yeah, so altogether, like, you have this benevolent, overarching hand of the market that submits to the merits of
Right.
your work and
Rewards you.
it moves straight along. Progression.
Yep, not just the same.
Just making sure.
That's funny. I kind of like the text in the middle a bit though too, because it's not like blocking you, kind of.
Mm.
I mean, we could put it on the side, but it doesn't matter.
I'm glad we were able to tackle this conversation without getting, too weird.
It's funny the way it's pointed out. Eon is jealous about it. The female standing piss. Like out of context. It's- yeah, and you shouldn't be jealous, man. We'll just call it the standing piss, and we'll wait for it to change.
The biggest takeaway is
We're out of here anyways.
the
like,
biggest
soon.
takeaway from that conversation though is that that cup is useful. That's literally the only thing to take away from it all.
Never are disputed.
And why not?
Lots of good topics today.
I think the most one worthy of memory right now is the being the center of the universe. Not for the spiritual bullshit, but for asserting the frame of reference from which everything else
Seems
should
pretty
be
good.
looked at.
Like anchor statement,
Yeah,
if you will.
where the moment
Now,
is.
what if I am the center of the universe?
Where the moment at, yo?
Is this thing simple or complicated?
Do you see what I'm getting at with the moment? Center, moment, put together.
There you go. Yeah.
Everything
Correct.
radiates back
Mhm.
out.
Yeah, that's logical connection.
Center. Yeah.
Center of the universe. I like it. I don't mind. It doesn't hurt me.
It's not as fucked as people think.
Feels okay.
To the center.
Yep.
I don't know about you, but I'm fairly intoxicated.
Yep. That was great to have Cam by earlier. We talked to him for an hour and a half.
Cam is an old friend.
It was like kind of the typical archetypal discussion of like, why would you do?
Why are we doing
Why
this?
would you do the work?
Yeah.
Then Jenya's metaphor of singing music.
Yeah, like
Why don't you play music?
the question was like, what am I trying to change, or what are we trying to change, or all of that
It's,
general
it's either like,
dream-oriented
Are you
sort of.
trying to make a change in the world, or just to speak abstractly?
Well,
Like the divide between the two. Like, which is it?
so I answered with the question of what, like, when you're singing, are you trying to rearrange the air, like permanently to any degree, or is it just within that timeline? The idea being simple is that there's pent up energy,
Hmm.
and
Right.
and you let it out.
Not dependent on some high ideology of the system.
Right. It is a spontaneous reaction. Spontaneous being a very loaded word, of course, but like, I mean, it could be traced back to, you know, the Buddhist stuff and all of that crap.
Right. Then we
But-
have this modeling of an ego being constantly poked and prodded through reward and punishment over the market into doing things. Well, I think that's our cue, though.
Think so?
Yeah, it's gotta be. Who else is honking? So with that, it's been a good 2.5 hours, and we shall see you all for meeting number 62. Or will we?
Throw that onto my kits over there.
Peace outs. You got tickles?